What's up, guys? I am back with an Elise guide. Now, the reason why I picked Elise right now is because I think she is a very strong pick in the meta in solo queue when you're having trouble controlling the game. Like, for example, some champions like Talia or Karthus, just these sort of AP champs don't, or Echo, don't tend to be able to affect the early game much and control and snowball the game. Whereas Elise, her strengths lies in her versatility and her ability to dive, but also the fact that she's not forced to 3 camp and gank every time. She has the luxury of full clearing or early ganking or diving. She has a lot of options and ways to gap close. I I enjoy playing the champ generally just because of the fact that I get to control how the game's played. I think that's something that I think if you play Elise or you already main Elise, probably one of the reasons why you like the champion so much. Now, obviously, there are clear weaknesses when it comes to the insane strengths. When it comes to the insane early game, you also have a much weaker mid game depending on the champions you're versing. So I don't agree with the general idea that Elise is a champion that is not good mid game. It's only not good against certain champions. For example, I'll be going with this later, but for example, mage mids and mage supports that protect you from getting one shot essentially, or champions that outrange. So usually tends to be the mid and support because they're usually the ranged champions. They tend to be very hard to deal with as Elise. I'll be going over how to deal with those problems and mid game as well when the game is not going as well, how to find ways to utilize your champion still and be effective. And just overall how I like to play the champion. Alright, so for Elise runes, we want Electrocute most of the time. We want Cheap Shot because we can't utilize the other items, runes. Sorry, and we want Eyeball Collection. Then we want Relentless Hunter over Treasure Hunter. Now the reason that is because one of Elise's weaknesses is her ability to gap close. And Cocoon is really slow projectile, so being able to move faster than the enemy means you're going to be able to hit more cocoons and close the distance. So that's going to be always more valuable than just more gold. And you're roaming the map a lot anyway. So for secondary tree, this can depend on your preference, but most of the time you probably want to go absolute focus and water walking. Over the patches, over the years, Nimbus Cloak used to be really good, but nowadays it's not as effective on Elise or in general. So unless you're going face rush, you should never ever go Nimbus Cloak. So always be absolute focus and water walking. And then we have our adaptives. We always go attack speed. Elise has a lot of auto attack animation resets in a kit, or two specifically, that you're going to mainly use. So attack speed is always going to be useful. And then adaptive. And then for health or armor or MR, generally you want to have health or you want to have armor. You only ever go armor or MR if they are literally completely full AP or full AD. Otherwise, if they're balanced, generally I like to go health just because of the scaling benefits, and on top of that, you're able to not get armor and then be really squishy to magic damage. You have a general balanced resistance in this rune. Alright, so for Elise, there are two different options where you're going to have to adapt. I like these two options in general for Elise's first buy. So generally, depending on how much gold you base on, you're going to want to have Orc Boots on your first buy, or you're going to want to have Finished Codex Boots, depending on the situation. Now, when you want to buy Sorc Boots, it's in general situations where you feel like you're going to be moving on the map a lot, and it's the type of game where you're not really full clearing. You're doing 2 camps or less, and you're moving into a lane, and it's quite a chaotic game. Now, in a very slow game, I would actually recommend going Finished Codex and Boots, just because there's nothing going on. And if you base on 800 gold, then Boots and then Amp Tone will also be beneficial for you. Just in general, as a general concept, buying tier 2 Boots is not good for your clear, so that's why you're not going to buy Bulk Boots if it's a very slow game and not much is happening. And then the reason why I do not pull for the Hex Deck Alternator is because I just do not feel as though the damage on champions is worth the buy for Finished Codex over a long period of time. Where Finished Codex CDR, it works on everything, whereas Hextech Ultimate, you're paying for additional damage to champions. Where usually if you've got Hextech Alternate, you're not really fighting that much because you would probably have Soft Roots. So I usually buy that second after Finished Codex, and then we finish with Night Harvester. So after Night Harvester, this is where my style comes in. I really enjoy doing full damage and making it. Usually by this time I'm level 13, so Elise's W really pops if you have a lot of AP. I'm not sure the exact scaling, but it does a lot of damage to any champion that doesn't have much MR. So I'm gonna opt for the full AP items. It's either Rabadons or Shadow Flame. One of these two. I'll always try to get Rabadons if I'm really fed, but Shadow Flame if I'm not getting that soak, that needlessly large rod of buys that I can get. And then from there, it's generally always Zhonya's. There's synergy with Zhonya's. Hopefully, I'll show it at some point, but if I don't show it, it's where if you Zhonya's and you have spiders targeting a champion, spiders will continue target the champion while in Zhonya's. So that is very, very helpful. And with your repel plus Zhonya's combo, you can create a lot of space for your team. And last but not least will always be Void Staff. It's just fundamental for damage. I'll call special considerations for champ times where you just need to kite people, like 4 melee champs, Rylai's. Or sometimes when you're versing extremely squishy champs, you can also consider Lichbane, since it's been constantly buffed. So it's actually not bad. Other than that, I won't mention. You're probably wondering why I don't mention Hextech, not Hextech Gunblade, the Hextech Rocket Belt, because it sounds good in theory. You get more penetration, magic penetration, so it sounds good. But in reality, if you're using that item, the active, and you're shooting forward, can't really cocoon after unless they literally don't have flash. So it's hard to use with Elise, even though in theory it sounds good. So let's run through the champs that Elise wants to verse versus the champs that generally struggles against, and let's go through why. So you can see the general pattern here with the top laners. These are champions that are immobile, or they have to use their spells or abilities or walk up to their laning partner to deal a trade. Uh, these are just examples. There are other champions, but for example, Jax has to jump in, Darius has to walk up his Q, or Malphite in this case is sort of a special case because he's just really bad versus DP champions in general because he builds armor. On top of the fact that you can repel his ultimate, which is pretty much game over if you do, makes Elise a really good matchup for these champions. And notice how I don't say junglers. I'm talking about top laners. And in general, top lane is usually where you're going to want to dive. Of course, we can talk about synergies with bot lane, but that is RNG. But usually top laners are just straight up melee champs and bruisers. Whereas bot lane, ideally you want kill lanes too, like Samira, Norlis, uh, Nyla, plus a melee champ. You get the idea. But that is not as common as just two bruisers, which is very common in almost every game. So that's where Elise is going to shine in those games. And now let's talk about junglers. So my favorite jungler verse as Elise is Graves because he has no CC to actually do damage to you. He has to gap close, which is exactly what Elise wants. You can generally ignore him when you're going to dive another lane because his ability to gap close and follow up is pretty bad unless he's just gotten ran for kills. And Kane is similar where he's really weak scaling champion. He's full clearing, so usually you get to do whatever you want. And the way he has to do damage is come into you, which is perfect for Elise because Elise's main damage comes from her ability to auto attack and use her spider form. But you can see the trend as the list goes down. There is more mobility, Riven Kindred, or there is some sort of counterplay with Cocoon. Whereas Evelyn Nocturne, usually they can survive using a Nocturne W or Evelyn ult if you ever catch them, which is not great for Elise. And the list goes on as well with Fiora W. Even though it's still good for you, because the way she trades really helps Elise get free kills and ganks. She still has parry, so there's that you have to work around. So that's why I put it at A. Jace, a little bit different. Now we're talking about outranging. That's one of the problems Elise has, is getting outranged. And his ability to face check. He has his Q or his QE to check bushes, so the likelihood of you catching and face checking is just really low. And he has a lot of disengage with his Q and E hammer form. So as we go down, it gets worse and worse. So you can clearly see there's a distinct strengths and weaknesses to Elise. Now we have Olaf and Sejuani. I think that's self-explanatory, where Sejuani is just too tanky, so if you trade spells, you're not going to win that duel ever, because of your stats as a champion is just not strong enough to survive spells, whereas Sejuani can't. And that's where her strengths are. And same with Olaf. So the longer fights go, the worse for Elise. And then moving on, we have the combination of unable to die, mobility. For example, Nidalee is faster than you, and has sustain. So all those, Lee Sin has a similar thing, but at least with Lee Sin, he comes melee range into you, so you can do a lot of DPS to him. He tries to fight you straight at 1v1. So Lee Sin not as bad, but nearly usually tends to be one of the worst matchups. And then of course you have the tank bros here, Ornn and San. As I said earlier, with the idea that if you trade spells, you don't win that trade with Elise, you're going to die most of the time. So if they can survive your full burst, they're usually going to retaliate and beat your ass. And then as you go down, you can see generally mid laners are the ones. Mid laners and supports are the general crux of Elise. It's they generally tend to be able to survive a full combo or be out of range and outrange, which is again one of Elise's weaknesses, and punish you really hard and do a lot of damage. As you can see, Echo here, I put Orianna Zoe as F. Yes, you can repel Zoe's sleep, but then what happens after you repel? You generally they will pick up suns for spells that you where you're not able to retaliate properly. And Lilia encapsulates everything about the weaknesses that Elise has, where you can catch you, she usually can dodge your cocoon, but it's quite difficult, and she can outplay you. I guess you have some strengths there where you can repel her ult, but again, if she uses a full combo on her, she has Conquer and healing with her passive and survives, she will pretty much TikTok dance on your head. So these are gonna be a sort of, don't worry about these specific champions, but you can. I wanted to let you know the specific weaknesses and strengths of Elise when it comes to champion versus champion. Okay, so let's talk about the main combos for Elise. There's going to be specific scenarios when you would use them, and other combos, other scenarios. So the main combo I would like to talk about is this. Now, what just happened there? So the main point of that full combo that most people don't get, and even I didn't get, I give credit to Bo for this, is auto attack cancel animation as you change forms. So I'm gonna do this without spells, so you guys can see. I'm gonna auto attack the dummy and change as my auto attack's about to hit the dummy, so that I hit it with my spiders. Now I completely failed there. Let me try again. Okay, I failed again. There we go. Alright. Now that takes practice. But if you can get it down, what it does is it puts the spider aggro on them as soon as possible. Whereas if you just full combo here, okay, I just did it perfectly then. Let me try to fuck it up. The spiders spawn behind me and they don't go directly towards the champion. So this is actually very important if you want to do max DPS, but again, this only works if you're inside your auto attack range. So you can't do it from max range cocoon. You see how I tried to auto attack, but then it cancelled itself? Yeah. So in those scenarios, you want to use your auto attack animation cancelling. When you're in between form change. When you're in auto attack range. Now, when you're in spider form, ideally you want to be able to Q first and then auto W. Because again, we're trying to get the most out of our weaving our auto attacks, right? Your W is an auto attack reset. So being able to auto W is very crucial. Even though I know Elise's Q is an execute, the value of auto W is extremely high. You would only ever want to use your W before then when you know the guy is 100% dead and you just want to kill him as fast as possible. You're not trying to do max DPS, you're just trying to do max burst, right? There's a difference between max burst and max DPS. And the other combo you're gonna want to do with Elise is your ability to use your Q and weave your auto attacks in between. This is more about interacting with the champion, right? We talked about in a previous section about how you have to work around some champions like Fiora or Sejuani. First, you have to break that barrier of what is going to stop you from cocooning them. So, for example, with Shiro W, But Sejuani, why would you want to cocoon a Sejuani with a passive? You're not going to do damage to him anyway. So being able to weave auto attacks in between that time where you're breaking their passive or you're baiting their spells is really valuable, as a lot of people will freak out when you just keep auto attacking them and you don't throw your cocoon. And once you do throw your cocoon, you're ready to actually execute them. I guess similar to like how a spider would actually kill its prey. So there are two main concepts you need to know when it comes to ganking on Elise. The first is going to be your ability to hold your cocoon when ganking. So this is going to allow time and space to do DPS, normally more than you would when rather than just cocooning straight away. So for this example, even though she didn't juke at all, I was giving her the chance to, and if she did, I would have done much more DPS because she'd just be tap dancing and going left and right. And if we go back here to how I handled the dive, you notice how I stayed confident up until the last second for the tower shot. Now this is going to come with experience. This is the other concepts that you're going to want to learn when playing Elise, is having the ability to repel only when the tower is about to hit you. The tower ball, if I was being specific, is about to hit you, and repelling, knowing this one's more about knowing your limits, but also ties into the fact that you have to be more willing to repel the tower shot rather than the champion damage you're about to take from the champion itself. This will take a lot of time and experience, but if you can get these two concepts down, you'll have a much higher success rate when it comes to ganking on Elise. So in this clip, you're going to see one of the biggest issues with playing Elise is it is brutal when you throw your lead. So here you can see I've got my team ahead, I'm 3-1, and I walk out to the river first before anyone else, thinking that I'm strong enough, but he's clearly stronger than me. He's level 8 and he is a mythic. And now I gave him a shutdown even though he was already ahead of me in EXP and levels, because of all the kills I've gotten from just ganks while he's been farming. So this is going to be now extremely hard game after I did that, because I'm much more useless than him and he's more useful. Another thing that you don't want to be doing is being in open space. Whenever you're pathing on Elise or assassins in general, you don't want to be seen on the map at all. But there are times where you have to show, but ideally you never want to be showing. And that ties into what we've talked about previously, that you don't want to be doing is being late to bushes. So if you're contesting an objective or an area and the opponent is willing to come as well, you don't want to be accepting that you're going to farm more and then you give them the bushes first. That's just going to make your champion useless. So thinking like as an assassin is always going to benefit you, and if you don't play like an assassin, your champion will significantly reduce in effectiveness and usefulness. To talk about one of Elise's biggest weaknesses is team fighting and how we can work around that. So keep in mind that again, Elise's biggest weaknesses is getting outranged, and usually in a 5v5 team fight, you'll tend to get outranged. But one of Elise's biggest strengths is her W when you have fed or you have AP. Now this doesn't work if you go a very defensive build. If you don't have Shadow Flame or Rabadons, your W is not going to do nearly as much damage. But in this scenario, I have Shadow Flame, and with my Mythic, and my W does a lot of damage. So utilizing this is going to be very effective in a standoff 5v5. As you can see here, it's not the best example because the fight starts off very fast, but in the beginning, you can already see I get ranked and down to close to half from 3/4. So that was a decent chunk, and had I waited another 8 seconds, we would have won again. Small thing here, I'm out of range, and you see how I've also done a quarter health to Lysandra just by activating my Frenzied on my W, changing forms, and the spiders auto aggro it with my smite. And the fact that they spawned right next to him as well. So I forced him to ult. I thought he was going to ult me, so I Zhonya's. And this is where I make a lot of time with my repel plus Zhonya's combo. I'm able to survive it long enough so that my cocoon hits again, and I'm able to essentially proc my Night Harvest on 3 people, which is great value. So there you saw a combination of working around the range problem, utilizing my E and Zhonya's buy to create space in the team fight, and then, if I hadn't mentioned already, using your W when you're really fed to poke. I think if we just kept standing off, they would have had to back off, because my W no one can tank my W at this stage of the game. Alright, welcome to the live breakdown. Me, Shernfire, and my special guest, Elise. This is going to be a live breakdown, so I'm going to be narrating / commentating throughout the game. So this game we actually have really bad Elise game honestly for me, with all the range champs, but very good Elise game for the top side and mid. But I have really bad setup in my triple AP, so and their bot lane out range is really hard. So I'm gonna let my whole team deal with these 2 champs, Action General, and then I'm gonna deal with the rest. Make sure Kane doesn't do some weird cheese.
Minions have spawned.
Well, with Darius having Ignite, it's really advantageous for me. That's like Darius is gonna 3-wave crash. 3-wave. Not sure what I can do with that yet. Bot's looking juicy, but since this guy ran Ignite, I still want to be topside. If it had TP, I might have considered bot lane, but top seems, especially he's got Doran's Blade too. Got all the setup for. Gonna pot here. This E, it's not a problem. I'm gonna chase him here. Got him. This is probably a mistake by me. I already made the mistake, so I'm gonna have to live with it. Go Raptors to Raptors here. And choose to take the wave down. Alright, now the question is if I can make it top side. So we've snowballed the game pretty much perfectly in the top side. It's just whether or not we can use that. Alright, the tanky camps. It's gonna crouch, so it's gonna stack back. Maybe I just do one camp. Check my camps as well. Just gonna pink here first. I don't think I'll make it. Take my reset here. I'll come back topside when Darius reset too. He probably wants to reset as well. A lot of people might go Herald here, but most aggressive play we can make here, not the Herald. The only problem is Kane could take it now, but if Kane takes it, then we're gonna dive top again. So it's the trade-off. They could. Should definitely do Herald here. Yeah, I'll do next wave. Oh, this camp's a level 1. Oh, I've been busy. But these are the wrong runes. I don't want to complain for some reason when he's actually carrying the game. By surviving every altercation that came with his time doing that. Actually good for us, but you know.
Your team has destroyed a turret. Turret plating will soon fall.
Base, yeah.
Your turret has been destroyed. Rampage.
Alright, let's look at how we can transition our lead into the mid game. I'm actually recording halfway through again. There's some new tech because yeah, I mean top top lane situation in this game is just messed up, so. I don't see it happening unless it's a 3-man job. Gonna calm down. Gonna dice. It's very bad. Nice. Generally ganking top naturally makes sense. Facing you. We lose the plate of that. No, we don't. Alright, Herald's still up. It's probably a time we might lose it actually. We'll need a reset. I'm just gonna assume it's gone. But I'll take these two camps.
Killing spree.
Oh my god, holy shit. Alright, so now we're going to need to use Caitlyn's lead and Jenna's lead and move on with the game. Yeah, I agree. Should be able to kill.
Turret plating will soon fall.
Close. Oh, and the plates too. Voila. Yeah, generally when you were playing Elise, like the goal is to dive and ultimately take plates and get your laners ahead. Because again, like solo carrying on Elise is just not gonna happen. Even 5. Alright, now I want to be working on basing as soon as possible. But I need to be with my team. It's not a good base for me. Everyone's already out. Quite late. So I'm gonna skip camp, so because I was busy out playing.
It's a sweet
Don't want to trade sides here. Yeah, I mean, preferably don't. Like, even if someone does some dumbass shit. More. Got punished. Game while snowballing like it one. We got a lot of kills, but we're not breaking structures. And our wave state's just bad. So this game is looking good on on the PR side, but in reality we're not, the stocks are not going up. Like, why is this guy letting him clear the way? Yeah, not ideal. two
destroyed
shutdowns.
a turret. An enemy has been slain. Shut down.
We're giving them hope again. This game is definitely not making them FFL. This is why I didn't want to take in guys. Because this is exactly what could have happened. The fucking... I died twice, and then Caitlyn gets 700 got shot down too. It's like, I always gave them the perfect recipe for disaster. And they have the OP item. Real so. Let's break these structures together. We don't have TPs. He has no ammo. Please kill him.
An enemy has been slain. Double kill. Your team has destroyed an inhibitor. Your team has destroyed a turret.
He hits everything up again, bro.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
That item is truly terrifying. Oh, the main goal for us is just to be essentially the CC bot and make space. Bastard.
A summoner has
I mean, overall, I didn't snowball how I wanted, but I was able to transition. I guess give you guys an idea of how to transition your lead. The main goals are usually denying CS structures, plates for yourself. Objectives usually come last when you're snowballing the mid game as Elise. Or you use objectives to kill people that are trying to face check. But wasn't wasn't able to snowball cleanly, but you guys get the idea. I wanted to showcase an example of how to play the game when you're not particularly ahead on Elise. Yes, as you can see, I am 3-0-3, but our team is overall losing, and their team is overall ahead, and I'm playing Elise. So in the mid game, ideally you want to be ahead, but this game, as a team, we are not ahead. Even though I am sort of ahead, Karthus probably is level 10 right now, and I'm level 9, so he's probably up in EXP. I'm just up in gold. But as you can see here, the main goals with Elise is catching people out, because the problem with Elise is her ability to gap close. That's her biggest weakness. She has really bad gap close. So as you can see here, we give the dragon. I take out the Renekton by chance, but I was going to pressure the dive anyway. So we trade objectives. I'm just gonna skip through. I decide to base with my side laners. I decide to stay for this timer. I regroup with my team. But the thing that's deceiving about this game, to be honest, guys, it's one of the easier games to play, Elise. I have so many good options. They have 4 or 5 low range champs. I'll count. I'll pretty much count any champ as a champ that's good for me when they're just auto attackers like Kale and Kai'Sa, and they are low range, so they have to get close to me, right, to do damage. Every single champ here is actually a good target for me. So this game is sort of deceiving. This is not a game where I'd say it's very difficult to play mid game, but I just want to show you guys since I'm behind anyway. So here's where the disaster happens. We end up dying. We won't go over why I died, but this is, this is where the games are lost usually, right? You can see Karthus is level 12, and I just gave a 300 gold shutdown, 250 gold shutdown. And we were already behind in the first place. So let's see how I deal with this situation here. So here, again, we try to sweep, we try to take it, we always try to be in an era first, because as I said, to deal with the problem that Elise has with being outranged and people playing around your cocoon, you have to be there first to allow the opportunity for potential face checks. So as you can see here, we got, again, if I didn't run straight here after red buff with my mid laner, we wouldn't have got this free pick, and now I herald and it snowballs into 2 towers. So that one play right there got me 2 towers. Obviously this is just a snowball effect of people just dying one by one in solo queue. And actually they almost kill us, but we do some really good kiting. Again, my champion's actually really strong against this type of comp. Any cocoon is just death for them, so they have to respect my range as well. As you can see, every single cocoon has been a kill. So now we're back in the game. I'd say we're ahead now. And I'm again working on being there first. Similar example. And when I can be there first, look how I get opportunities to throw cocoons. Obviously, I got Druk there. Journaling Kujo. But we work on it again. It's the same thing. These guys can't tank my W poke and my E. You notice how I don't show up on the mid wave? I just stay around the area where if anyone walks up, I can still look for something. And yeah, as you can see, I'm following the same principle again. I want to be working around fog of war. That's how you close the gap on people when you get outraged. And from here, I am pretty sure it's just picks from here on out. Picks and kiting. Thank you for watching my Elise guide. If you enjoyed this content, well, I've got a lot more coming for you in the future. Going to be uploading guides and jungle content as well. On top of that, I'd like to announce my website. It's going to be a release soon and platform, and it's going to be different to how I've run my Patreon and how I've coached traditionally and sort of copied the traditional coaching method, which I found to be not as effective inside the platform. I'm going to be using a different method of coaching, which I believe will help any player that wants to improve and climb to their ranks as fast and as efficiently as possible. So stay tuned for that.